light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I wanted to offer some thoughts and reflections on coping with the separation that is caused by physical death when a loved one or a friend or even a stranger, maybe even someone we've never met, passes away or dies, crosses to the other side, whichever linguistic terminology you want to use. They're gone from the physical life. In those moments, according to different cultures and different subcultures all around the world, we tell ourselves different sorts of things in order to cope with that transition. Birth and death are among those moments where we are confronted with that which is greater than ourselves, that no matter what our discoveries, our developments, our accomplishments, whatever, there is something bigger that says these are the parameters and you will not be able to supersede them. There's something that puts an end to it, puts an unavoidable boundary. Some spiritual perspectives describe it as being a veil between this world and the next, that what happens in spiritual realms and the whole spiritual dimension of being is absolutely real, and the problem is mostly that we can't see it with our physical eyes, and so we have to learn to see it, if you will, with the eyes of our heart and with the eyes of our spirit, which to someone who prefers a more scientific approach, that may be very difficult dynamic to embrace. There are a great many things, however, that relate to life that can be neither proven nor disproven, but are essential to our ability to cope. And allowing for that sort of poetry, that sort of mystery, those things that are gray, that are neither black nor white, they're things that we cannot prove and we cannot disprove, but somehow they make all the difference in whether we can cope with a moment that is filled with mystery, filled perhaps with wonder, but wonder is not always a positive thing. We can also wonder about negative things. We can experience wonder as positive or negative. The point in today's topic, though, is when someone is gone and they are no longer there, and we have to come to terms with the separation. So some people might say they're in a better place. Well, we have no way of knowing that. We can't prove that they're not, and we can't prove that they are. We hope that they're in a better place. We pray that they're in a better place. Perhaps in our spirits, some of us would say that we know they're in a better place. Some deep inner knowing, some emotional reality that somehow impresses itself upon our hearts, that for a variety of reasons we know they're in a better place. Maybe because we want them to be in a better place, maybe because we found them to be such a loving person we can't imagine them not being in a better place. But ultimately these are things that can be neither proven nor disproven. I guess what I'm arguing for in saying all of that is to give ourselves permission to use whatever metaphors or stories or intellectual empowerments are helpful to us, to allow us to adjust to that passing, to the loss of that person, that this is someone in some way important who will not be there anymore. And there may be both benefits and disadvantages to that. By having a gifted person gone, it provides opportunity for numerous others to build upon that work and take it in new directions that perhaps that person would not have been able to take it. I recall one peculiar movie where there was a wizard who needed to make a journey from this place to a very distant place and knew that he did not have the physical strength to do that, and so basically somehow condensed his energy into a crystal that was given or bequeathed, given, I guess, to a young man who had the physical strength to make the journey. What the young man didn't realize at the time is that the spirit of the wizard was in the crystal. He was simply told that when he gets to such and such place, he is to take the crystal and throw it into, quote, the lake of fire, which turned out to be when he got there and recognized it intuitively, it was an area near a volcano where there was molten rock all over. And yeah, it kind of looked like a lake of fire. It was lava. It was molten rock that glowed red. And so he threw the crystal into it, and the magic was that the crystal opened up and the wizard was reconstituted in the new place, having been carried the entire distance by the young man in the form of a crystal. A rather fantastical sort of movie, but one that offers metaphorical possibilities to us. That there is a sense in which physical bodies wear out, but the essence of the spirit of that person can be carried further within the lives of everyone who loved them. There are effects within my life, changes to the way I make decisions, to the way I choose what to attempt, to the ways I initiate things, that would not be there except for the friendship and the interactions that I've had with various people who are no longer within the physical world. They have died and their spirits have been liberated. Wherever those liberated spirits went, I don't know. One of the basic laws of physics is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It simply changes form and place. The energy of a life, therefore, must be somewhere. What consciousness or effect it can have upon the material reality, the reality that was left behind, I'm not sure, but it does make sense that there would be some effect. Within my own life, though, I am able to notice an effect of meeting a new challenge and being asked to make a decision, and for no apparent reason, suddenly having the thought, I wonder what so-and-so would do in this situation. And recalling their memory and knowing how they would have acted in that situation or guessing how they would have reacted in that situation based on what I knew of them, and then making the decision of whether I think I should do the same thing or whether I think I should do something different because of the differences between myself and that person. In that effect, in that shift in my life that was specifically caused by my relationship and friendship with them, there is a sense in which they are living further in me. There is a sense, for example, in which St. Francis of Assisi lived on in all of his followers and all the members of the first and second and third orders of Franciscans. The men who described themselves as Franciscans and embraced a life with some commonalities with the example that St. Francis of Assisi set. The women who created an order for women, a religious order for women that embraced similar principles and behaviors, trying to bring into their lives some of the sacredness and holiness and wholeness, if you will, the holistic integration of physical and spiritual realities that St. Francis of Assisi demonstrated. And then, of course, the third order Franciscans, where those were people who were not necessarily in a chaste religious order, but they might be married couples with children. But again, what comes through in each of them is embracing the principles and practices that, and not only embracing them, but developing them further to bring a sense of wholeness and holiness and spiritual physical integration to their lives, to bring to their lives a concern for the poor, a sense of service, a sense of living for something bigger than just the limited world that we see and hear and feel and touch, but understanding that life is so much more than that, that there is a sense in which the divine manifests itself in some tiny way, or at least can manifest itself in some tiny way through each individual life. So when someone passes away, we tell ourselves various things to get through that moment. For some people, it seems that their push is to get through the moment, get beyond it, get behind it, put it away from them. For other people, I would suggest there is a more holistic embrace that more truly honors the memory of the departed person by allowing that effect that they had upon one's life to be replicated again and again and again for years to come. I'm sure there are numerous examples of people who found their life calling, who found their life work, specifically by the death of someone whom they greatly respected. That if this person could no longer be here to do the job, well, then I'll step forward and do it. And finding that calling within themselves, not to be that person and in a psychologically dysfunctional way convince themselves that they are no longer who they were, but to integrate that person's essence and values and thought processes into their own life, so that the result is a merging of every beautiful thing they have within themselves and every beautiful thing they've observed in the life of whichever other person this is. Yes, in a sense, we are ourselves, but there is also a sense in which we are also every age we have been and every person we have met. That in every case, they have left metaphorical fingerprints upon our lives, and that we are different because of the shaping and molding that they applied to our soul. It is not uncommon when one has lost contact with a person because of their death, because they have crossed over, to still have conversations with them, to envision that they are spiritually present, although invisible. That it becomes kind of a one-way conversation, though some would say that it is a two-way conversation if they can be attentive to their intuition. There are numerous friends that I have who believe that the intuition is the sensitive touchpad where a spiritual person can touch or write a letter or give a communication or communicate a word, and that non-material part of ourselves, the intuition, feels something, and we may not be able to understand it in the same way that we read a sentence in a book or a bit of text on a computer screen, but we understand in some sort of quiet way the direction this communication wants us to move. We understand that they are trying to convey reassurance that everything's okay, that I really am in a happier place, that this particular person whom you're meeting now might be the special someone in your life to replace me. I know that if I were to die and I had a life partner of some sort, I would want him to meet someone new. I would want him to go on experiencing love within this life for as long as he could. I wouldn't want him to chain himself to the moment of loss when I departed, to interpret that somehow his life was less because I was gone. There is a sense in which the world is less every time somebody leaves, and yet there is a sense in which it is much, much more than it could have been while the person was here, because while the person is here, everything they are is for the most part contained within them. There's a sense in which being liberated from the body allows the spirit and the energy of that person's life to expand in ways that they never could while they were here. A perhaps more mundane corollary of this is that the notation. People have noticed that there are numerous presidents among those who, presidents, famous people, and so on. When they're here, they're challenging, they're inspiring, yeah, okay. But there's always something a little difficult about that, because when they're here, they're challenging us to grow. And growth is always, by its nature, a little bit uncomfortable, because we're letting go of things that have become very comfortable, and we're embracing new things that, like a new pair of shoes, might be a little stiff at first until we kind of break them in. But when these people were assassinated, it's as if the best parts of their life came to the fore and somehow became heroic in the public imagination, inspiring all sorts of charitable works and constructive civic works that might not have happened any other way. It's where I heard the quote once that there's something about martyrdom, but not exactly a quote, but it's by bestowing martyrdom on someone, you essentially make their voice eternal. There's a lot of people who may have dwindled away and died in obscurity, except for the fact that they were killed for a cause at a very specific moment in human history. There are presidents that are regarded as great presidents, that if you look at what they actually did, it becomes debatable just how great of a president they were. But because they died in the line of duty, I suppose you could say, because they were assassinated, somehow experiencing that loss, one of the ways people come to terms with it is fixating on all the positive contributions of that person's life. In fixating on the positive contributions, it multiplies the effect of that person's life, but it also encourages us to forget the lesser qualities, the humanness of the person. I think sometimes it's helpful to remember that they were human, especially because that gives hope to each of us to be similar, that our humanness may not keep us from becoming similar historical heroes, but that the fascinating thing to me, though, is the paradox, I guess, of the transcendence and the humanness being within one person. That ultimately it is our humanness itself that gives us the sensitivity and the vision and the ability to integrate multiple dimensions, the ability to integrate physical and spiritual. That quality of humanness is what actually brings out the best in a situation. And in those occupations where people are told that they need to leave their humanness behind and be less than human, my observation is that they generally become very poor examples, and that the work they accomplish is disturbing at best. If, for example, a member of law enforcement, a police officer, becomes less human and more rigidly the embodiment of law enforcement, it becomes very problematic and very difficult to trust this person. It is in the moments when the police officer expresses compassion and understanding and patience that the best example of a police officer is demonstrated. And in those moments where the humanness is gone, that we wind up with a bully intent on enforcing the law regardless of the situation, and actually exacerbating the situation and creating more oppression. I recall seeing a note on the news just the other day of a police officer who pulled someone over along the highway, put on the flashing red lights, told them to pull over, came up and said, your registration on your license plate is expired, you need to deal with that. And the young man behind the wheel was just very apologetic, and he said, I know there's nothing I can do about it. I'm working as hard as I can, but we have no money, and I spent the money on food for my children instead of giving it to the county office to renew the registration on my car. And the police officer kind of said, and he wrote out a citation for him and then folded over and handed it to him. And inside the citation was a $100 bill. And the man was just totally flabbergasted that here was a police officer who was being human, who was exercising compassion and love. And the police officer chose to remain anonymous. The man, of course, was so grateful. He said he literally broke down crying in the car because he'd been struggling so hard to make ends meet, and then being caught in this situation where he just couldn't do anything about it. And I guess with that donation, he was able to renew the registration both on his car and his wife's car, so that the two of them could continue commuting to work legally and begin to deal more effectively with their family struggles. That police officer understood it was not about beating someone over the head with the law. It was about showing compassion, about being human. In those moments when someone is taken from us and we experience this separation, this loss, and part of us wants to be with them, it's the humanness and the compassion and the love of those around us, and perhaps even love and compassion for ourselves, that we give ourselves permission to grieve for a while, that we give ourselves permission to not be so perfect for a while, that when we need a particular experience in order to process the grief, if it's taking a day off and just going for a walk in the woods or whatever it is, that is a way of bringing our humanness to respond to the separation, so that the separation doesn't become an excuse or an opportunity for further damage, for further emotional and psychological struggle and pain. That is not the time, for example, for a scientific mind to step forward and say, well, no, they're just gone. You realize there's no such thing as a soul anyway, and trying to drum science into the moment when what is needed is love. If that scientific person embraces their humanness at that moment, they will know that rubbing someone's face in the hard facts of the situation is probably not helpful. And in their humanness, even scientists, even Albert Einstein, knew how to appreciate poetry and metaphor and symbolism, and just letting things be, even if they're imaginary, because imaginary things are frequently very empowering things. They don't have to be real to be empowering. The person is gone. They won't be coming back. In many belief systems, there's a hope that we'll see them again someday. In the moment, we desperately want to be with them. If they are spiritually present, I suspect that they're not encouraging us to hurry along, because they would know even more what the possibilities where we are, what those possibilities are, where we presently are. That, if it were me, I would want my life partner to meet someone new and to experience love again, because the experience of love is what matters. And when the time is right, I imagine we would be reunited on a spiritual plane, and maybe there would be a whole string of people to be reunited, and maybe it wouldn't be about being possessive, that this was my life partner, not yours, or something. Maybe it would just be, isn't it wonderful to all be here in love, and to fully embrace all the love and wisdom that all of us together have accumulated. We allow the separation because there is good that can be done on both sides. There is good in being free, to allow one's spirit to expand throughout the universe, to allow the love of any particular historical individual to become the love of all of humanity, to understand that the sacrifice somebody made in a particular moment, any number of sacrifices, could be the seed for all of us to be self-sacrificing in loving each other. And yet at the same time, not self-sacrificing in the sense of neglecting the container for love that each of us is, understanding that it is about embracing love, it is about extending love, but it is also about being able to continue to generate love. That rather than being angry at God for taking somebody away, we would understand that God and that person may be collaborating in providing us with opportunities for which there would have been no room while the person was still there. There are shifts and journeys and moves and changes that we can empower. But part of empowerment is also recognizing those moments when the best thing we can do is get out of the way. When someone needs to go through a time of grieving, when they need to come to terms with the separation, I may have ideas about how one could do that, whether it's having a conversation with a tombstone and allowing oneself to believe that they really are there listening, simply because it's empowering, not because it can be proven or disproven, but because it's empowering. And in ways that we don't fully understand, it even allows our mind and heart to recenter itself in love and in wisdom. To get out of the way and allow people that space, perhaps even to be the guardian of that space, to stand around it and keep the naysayers away. That those who want to be less than compassionately human are told, I understand the scientific explanation, it is not what is needed now, you need to go away. This is a space for grieving, this is a space for compassion, this is a space for comforting one another. This is a space for adjusting to the loss. And like most challenges, if we work together, we can do it so much better. Thank you for watching. I hope my comments of the last half hour have been helpful to you.